Yo, what is up guys, it's Ryan and back with another coaster review. Today we're going to be reviewing Hades 360 at Mount Olympus in the Wisconsin Dells. Hades 360 is a gravity group coaster, but it's a very special coaster. It was built in 2005 originally under the moniker Hades by itself, but then they took out the airtime hill where it turns around in the parking lot and added a corkscrew, and then they renamed it Hades 360 and added Timberliner trains as well. Those changes were made in 2013. So before I give you my ride experience, let's get into the stats. Hades 360 has a height of 136 feet, a drop of 140 feet, a track length of 4,746 feet, and a top speed of 60 miles per hour. Its elements consist of a corkscrew, a 110-foot overbanked curve, and an 800-foot long tunnel. Now that we've listed off some of the stats, let's get into the ride experience. I did manage to get 6 rides on Hades 360. I rode it 5 times in the back and 1 time in the very front row. So I did get a good feel of this ride. It definitely did warm up more and more through the day, as with any coaster it would. So if it's your first time riding it, don't go too hard on it because it definitely does need some time to warm up. But that's the same with any other coaster, so if you're a coaster enthusiast, that should be an unwritten rule. One thing to note is that the Timberliner trains tend to give a lot of space and don't tend to go down on themselves during the ride very easily. So you can get tons of space generally, and the ride operators generally don't staple too much at Mount Olympus on any of their rides. So I didn't have any issues getting airtime, and boy does this ride give you airtime, but I'll get into that just a little bit later. So the first thing you're going to do is go down out of that elevated station into one of the longest and arguably the best pre-drop of any coaster. Coaster Studio said it was his favorite pre-drop of all coasters, and he's done a lot more coasters than I have, so that's really saying something. It definitely gives you a lot of airtime and laterals before the ride even starts, and definitely gives you a feel for what the ride's about to do. Then you go up a 150-foot lift hill, crest at the top, go down the drop, and that's when the intensity kicks in right away. That drop is awesome. You go straight into a tunnel. You cannot see anything when you're in that tunnel. You have no idea where you're going. And next thing, you're twisting left and right. Next thing you know, you're being yanked into a corkscrew and then straight into a 110-degree overbanked turn up into a double down, and then you're going back into the tunnel doing the exact same thing you came. You have no idea where you're going. It's pitch black, getting yanked back and forth. The laterals on this coaster are insane. And then you go out, and then you go through a few more ejector hills into a few more helixes, and then the very last turn of the ride definitely loses its pace. But if it's the last turn of the ride before it goes into the brake run, loses its pace, I'll take the first 95% of the coaster going super fast. It's an insane ride. The pacing on this coaster is ridiculous. So remember when I said I'd get back to the airtime? Let's talk about that now. The airtime on this coaster is pretty good. It's not perfect. It's nothing crazy like Lightning Rod or Magnum XL 200. But it's not lame like Racer at Kings Island or anything like that either. I do feel like it definitely leans towards the ejector airtime side, and it helps when you have space. But I've noticed, like, unlike most normal airtime, this coaster gives me some weird forces personally. Instead of pulling me straight upward, like butt up to the lap bar, like you'd expect ejector to, it kind of pulled me forward as well, especially on that double down. So imagine like being launched forward and up at the same time. It was kind of a strange sensation, but it's pretty good airtime. It's not perfect like I said, but it's decent. Is this ride comfortable? It's not the most painful coaster I've done. That would go to T3 at Kentucky Kingdom or Vortex at Carowinds. But it's definitely not the smoothest coaster I've been on either. I wouldn't really call this ride rough because none of the transitions are rough. Track-wise, it's actually very smooth. It's just that the ride is very, very shaky and rattly and jagged. And I think that has something to do with the fact that there is only one train for each coaster at this park. And it's not like they have a ginormous maintenance shed to put it in like other parks do as well. So the maintenance here is kind of lackluster, so I think that's what has to do with it. And I'm not bashing the park either, because they're a smaller park with a smaller budget. It's not entirely their fault. That's just how it is. I think it all depends on who you are. If you think this coaster is rough and don't like it, or you think it's tolerable and do like it. I'm definitely on the tolerable side. One of my friends on the trip definitely was more on the uncomfortable side, but he did man up and ride it still, and still would admit that it was a very fun coaster. It just beats you up. So I guess it depends on your body size and everything like that as well. But personally, I actually like the shakiness because it doesn't make it feel like a super smooth coaster, and it kind of gives it that old wooden coaster feel where it does beat you up a little bit and throw you around. And it does have the inversion too, so it's like riding a old-fashioned wooden coaster with an inversion, unlike an RMC hybrid where it's super smooth, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, but it kind of just, it's kind of cool. As for the theming, it's pretty much non-existent. I was a little bit disappointed that it's literally basically a sign that says Hades 360 on the entrance. That's literally it. Like, there's nothing in the ride that even gives a hint towards the theming. And maybe if they could improve the theming, they could add some stuff in the tunnels to make it seem like the underworld. But at the same time, I kind of like it being pitch black because it adds to the fear factor. So it's kind of a toss up there, but theming doesn't bother me too much. I just thought I'd include that. Yeah, the crown jewel of this ride is definitely that inversion, and it is one of the best corkscrews of any coaster I've ever been on. It's not like super forceful or anything, it's just super fun and fast. It's definitely one of the faster inversions you'll ever go through. And I think that's one of the smoother parts of the ride, so you shouldn't get whipped around too much through that. You might actually catch a little hang time if you have enough space too, like I did. If you're a fan of laterals, you'll definitely get tossed around left and right a lot on this coaster. And with the Timberliner trains, if you have a lot of space, it actually will throw you upward a little bit too. So it's pretty insane. I was sitting on the left, I think, most of my rides. So whenever I'd have laterals that would throw me to the right, it would throw me up and to the right where I had space and there was like nothing between the seat divider and the right side of my restraint. So it was pretty sweet. So I think I pretty much talked about everything I wanted to talk about in no particular order about Hades 360. So now it's time to give it a final score. For its final score, I'm going to be giving Hades 360 a 95 out of 100. The only thing I don't like about this coaster is how rattly it is. And I'm a pretty tough guy, so I deal with it. But that's the only thing I would change about this ride. And I would almost guarantee you that if they got new trains for this coaster, or at least one new train, it would get so much smoother instantly. And I think that would do it the trick. So there's not much else I would change on this ride. This is a very, very underrated and underappreciated coaster. It's definitely in my top 5. I don't know where exactly. I keep debating that with myself. But it's definitely an amazing roller coaster. I highly recommend you get to Mount Olympus if you get the chance and go ride Hades 360 and all their other coasters. And definitely check out the water park if you have time too. So with that being said, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you guys next time. Here at Christian Coasters, we make epic videos. Peace!